So there's obviously a lot of indirect, I don't even think we've covered all of them, but there's obviously a lot of indirect concerns, disruptions that may happen that will eventually play out and impact the industry.
Yeah.
But if it gets resolved in the next week, do those still matter
It's great
or
question.
no?
And by the way, I think by the time this airs, we'll see if I'm right in a week or so. This will probably be resolved, but there's a couple of things that are really pressuring both sides to get back to the table and open this. Probably the biggest one is there's an October 15th deadline looming, which would be, if this isn't fixed by then, the paychecks of our active duty military personnel are at risk of not happening, of not going out. That's 1.3 million active, military members. Add another 800,000 more in reserves, right? And when you think about the state of the world, what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, China and the South China Sea issues, Taiwan. You think about what's going on in Latin America, right? You've got drug boats that the military is interdicting, and what's happening in Venezuela. You think about the Middle East, right? This is not a good time to not be paying the people that are on the front lines of helping keep the peace and solve problems. And by the way, I would argue in a lot of those places, like the Persian Gulf and like the South China Sea, the military is instrumental in keeping those trade lanes open, which is where a lot of our supply chain stuff comes from. So this isn't an abstract thing. I think this is real and genuine. So
I'm assuming that includes people on disability from the VA. They're also probably not getting their checks, I would imagine.
Well,
which really opens it up to way more than just a million, whatever active duty members there are.
I think if you tune on the news, I think you're going to hear the administration say, "Oh, they're going to get paid. Don't worry." Well, they may get paid, but that doesn't mean they may not be paid delayed. If anybody's ever had a problem with their payroll processing and it's made correct the next week, I know we have union contracts, and some of those contracts say if you make an error on a worker's paycheck, you have 8 hours to correct that before you start paying an 8-hour penalty for every day that it's not resolved, right? So I don't think there's anything like that. But I just think about those federal employees like military. Khalil, how about 14,000 air traffic controllers, which work for the FAA, and think about the people that keep the skies safe and running. That's already a high-stress job. The last thing you want is their Friday paychecks not hitting, and now they're up there doing that supremely difficult job, and their spouse isn't able to go to the grocery store because the check hasn't cleared yet. So that's another thing. How about the TSA, the TSA workers that keep those lines moving? Again, I think travel is one of those frontline things that keep our
that impacts the industry.
Going.
Yeah. That's a pretty direct one, I would say, for the industry. If people aren't able to show up to shows and the shows get canceled, so then that impacts you.
So, I guess the other broader concern, Khalil, and I had a conversation with Tommy Goodwin, many of you know, is our government affairs expert with the Exhibition Conferences Alliance. Just talked to Tommy this morning, and very real concern that if this gets resolved, we could absolutely see this happen again next month, right? When that CR, when the temporary kick of the CR, which goes to November, if they haven't solved these problems, this could happen again. It could happen again at the end of December, which is the real deadline of budgets that need
because
to be
this is all for the 2026 budget.
This is all for
not
next
the
year's
2025.
budget, right?
Yeah.
So we don't get to. There's no way I think our listeners get. You couldn't run your household this way. I mean, if you can, I can just imagine if whatever your paycheck is and you bring it home, right? Imagine if you and Powell just can't agree. Well, I think I want to, go to this grocery store. She's like, we need to go to the organic market. We need to grow our own vegetables to save money, right? And you go, well, I can't do that by next week. Well, and all of a sudden you're in an argument about some very basic. Stop filling the tank up Well, I put $10 a day. Well, you put it in every day. Just go once a week. I mean, think about how silly that might sound. And we've all had those arguments. On a much grander scale, this is us not
Yeah.
being able to agree. And I guess the real frustration is, to us outsiders that are watching the news and sitting on the sidelines, it seems like they're just trying to blame each other and not really solve the problem. So,
Yeah.
I really this isn't a show where we're going to unpack right or wrong. We really are talking about, has this government shutdown affected your business in the trade show and exhibit space? And
Yeah.
while most are saying not directly, I think this conversation is making sure, and we're just, we need to stay vigilant as advocacy warriors about what's happening and what the conditions are and what the variables affected are, because this could get, way worse much faster if we're not making sure our elected officials get back to work and talking to each other.
So what are the practical things that we can do in the industry with this going on? It seems like it's out of our control. So that's kind of the approach I've always taken. It's out of my control as an individual, so I shouldn't focus on it. But what are some practical ways that we can be doing contingency planning or whatever it might be for this current shutdown and potentially subsequent shutdowns?
Well, listen, I think every business leader or management team gets this. I think we were all looking forward to and counting on a solid economy in 2026. But I think most of us, quietly or not quietly, always have some kind of a defensive or contingency plan. I think you make sure that should these conditions change to the degree that it starts affecting spending decisions by the brand side clients that we all share. And you'll see that by way of proposal cancellations, or I don't know that we're going to see show cancellations, but what is the plan to maybe dial back on the spending plan, or maybe some of the aggressive growth stuff? Maybe revisit what your plan is, Khalil, and the question becomes, what are the conditions or the benchmarks given this uncertainty that, do we go back and revisit those? Do we need to redefine those and go, this is what has to happen before we move forward with this or this? Maybe it's, we're looking at 5 new hires in the next 12 months at our company. Is that still all systems go? What is it that could change that? If you're planning to do anything by way of expanding internationally, we have some EDPA members I know that just made acquisitions of companies internationally. Or I don't know that we can assume the same level of ease of travel back and forth. That was already sort of in question with some of the new things that are happening in the visa world. But I don't want to be an alarmist or a doom and gloom. Part of the job of advocacy leaders is to make you aware of what's happening. I think a lot of people just at first blush were going, this doesn't really affect me, the government shutdown. But purpose of this conversation is to make sure people understand there are variables that just are one, ladder rung away from maybe being affected, which could actually impact your business, like travel, like the fragile state of labor, like economic policy, which seems to be a constantly moving target. So those are all things I think we should be made aware of. Stay focused. Stay in touch with your elected officials, your congressmen, your senators. We all have those numbers from the years of advocating during pandemic. If you need them, hit me up on LinkedIn or reach out to the EDPA, Tommy Goodwin at the ECA. And if you'd like to give a message or a nudge to your own representatives, I think that's a good idea. We need you back in there getting the work done. Get the people's work done. But it's a concern to see an inability to just keep talking and working on a budget which every household in America has to do. So why can't we seem to
Yeah.
do this at the grander level?